The committee is meeting today to receive testimony on the way forward on border security. Before I begin, I want to express my condolences to those who lost loved ones in the devastating storms in the Southeast on Sunday. At least 23 people lost their lives and still more were injured in Lee County, Alabama, the ranking member's district. I'd like to speak for the members of the committee and say that our thoughts and prayers are with you and all your constituents at this difficult time. In addition, I'd like to express our sympathies to Congressman Katko in the loss of his father last week. A lot of us have been there. It's a difficult time, but know that we're all in support of you. Turning to today's hearing, I note it was been nearly a year since the Secretary of Homeland Security testified before this committee, as well as a number of members of this committee are meeting you for the first time. A great deal has happened in that time. The Department of Homeland Security separated thousands of children from their parents at the border. 2 small children died in the department's custody. The president shut down the federal government over demands for more taxpayer money for a border wall. And most recently, the president declared a non-existent emergency at the border because Congress would not capitulate to his funding demands. Clearly, oversight of the Trump administration's border policy is long overdue. Excuse me. Under my chairmanship, the days of lax oversight of the department by this committee are over. With the hope of informing our hearing discussion on January 4th, 2019, I wrote to Secretary Nielsen asking for documents related to the border wall, the department's interference with asylum seekers at ports of entry, separation of families at the border, and treatment of children in their custody. More than 2 months later, the committee has only received a handful of the requested documents. This is unacceptable. The committee needs this information for its oversight, and the department's failure to provide it raises further questions about this administration's credibility. Let me be clear. I'm prepared to use the tools at the committee's disposal to obtain the information if the Secretary fails to comply. Today, we will look at what the administration has said and done about border security and line it up against the facts. When it comes to border security, what the American people have heard from the Trump administration is misleading at best. The Secretary has said the administration had no policy to separate children from their parents, but internal memoranda makes clear she was aware the administration's policy would require families to be separated. No amount of verbal gymnastics will change that she knew the Trump administration was implementing a policy to separate families at the border. To make matters worse, the administration bungled implementation of a cruel plan, losing track of children and even deporting parents to Central America without their children. The department also began limiting lawful asylum seekers presenting themselves at ports of entry, driving desperate families into more remote parts of the border and overwhelming border personnel and resources in those areas. Tragically, 2 young children died when they became ill in custody. Shortly thereafter, the president shut down the government and declared a border emergency, an emergency that does not exist, to get more funding for a wall. The president himself admitted there's no emergency, even as he was announcing his declaration saying, "I didn't need to do this, I just want to do it faster." The president wants to build a wall so there is something to point to or have his picture taken in front of to convince the American people he has border security figured out. Real border security cannot be achieved by building a wall on the southern border, blocking asylum seekers, or separating children from their parents. These things are simplistic solutions that may have political appeal for some, but offer little security value, if any. Indeed, focusing on the southern border to the exclusion of threats elsewhere undermines Homeland security. Today, the Secretary can choose whether to be complicit in this administration's misinformation campaign, or she can correct the record and start a serious discussion about the way forward on border security. For the sake of our country, I urge her to choose the latter. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Rogers, for an opening statement.